The waters of the Persian Gulf shimmered under a pale orange sky. Oil tankers moved slowly along their routes. Seabirds circled above steel decks. And beneath that calm surface, tension simmered old, dangerous, and unfinished. Then the radar screens lit up, multiple fast-moving contacts, small, agile, closing distance. On the bridge of an American destroyer, silence fell for a split second. The kind of silence professionals recognize the moment before decisions shape history. Iran had just challenged the United States Navy. To understand why that moment mattered, you have to understand the geography. The Strait of Hormuz is barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Through this thin corridor flows nearly a fifth of the world's oil. Every tanker that passes through carries not just fuel, but economic stability. If the strait closes, markets panic. If conflict erupts, the shockwaves reach every continent. And Iran sits on the northern shoreline. For decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, the IRGCN, has built its maritime doctrine around one idea: asymmetry. Iran knows it cannot match American carrier strike groups ship for ship. Instead, it relies on swarming tactics, fast attack craft, coastal missile batteries, mines, drones. Hit fast, disappear faster. The United States Navy, by contrast, represents overwhelming conventional dominance. Guided missile destroyers equipped with the Aegis combat system, carrier-based fighter jets, surveillance aircraft that see hundreds of miles beyond the horizon, submarines lurking silently below. Two different philosophies, one narrow waterway. The pattern of confrontation is not new. In 1988, during the Tanker War, the U.S. launched Operation Praying Mantis, the largest American naval surface engagement since World War II. Iranian vessels were sunk in a single day. The lesson was brutal and clear: escalation carries consequences. But decades later, the tension never truly disappeared. Iran refined its swarm doctrine. Hundreds of small boats armed with rockets and machine guns, anti-ship missiles placed along the coast, underground missile depots carved into mountainsides, drones capable of tracking vessels at sea. From Tehran's perspective, these tactics level the playing field. From Washington's perspective, they are destabilizing and reckless. So when those fast-moving contacts appeared on radar, history was already in the room. The U.S. warship, a guided missile destroyer, was conducting routine operations in international waters. Surveillance aircraft circled high above. The crew was trained for exactly this kind of scenario. On the horizon, small Iranian boats began to form a loose arc. Speed increasing, distance shrinking. On board the American vessel, sailors moved to battle stations, weapons crews manned, 50 caliber machine guns. The ship's close-in weapon system, a radar-guided 20mm Gatling gun, rotated silently, tracking potential threats. Radio warnings were transmitted. This is a United States naval vessel operating in international waters. Alter course immediately. No response. Instead, the Iranian boats closed further, weaving unpredictably a classic harassment maneuver designed to test reactions and collect intelligence. This is where tension becomes dangerous. In a confined waterway with multiple vessels, miscalculation can spiral in seconds. A single warning shot misunderstood. A single missile launch misidentified. Iran's strategy hinges on ambiguity. Approach aggressively, but not aggressively enough to justify immediate lethal force. Push boundaries. Force American commanders into uncomfortable gray zones. But here is the strategic gamble. The U.S. Navy does not operate alone. Satellite coverage monitors every movement. Air assets stand ready. Additional warships patrol within response range. And the rules of engagement, though cautious, are firm. Back on the bridge, the American captain faced a calculation. Respond too aggressively, and escalation follows. Respond too softly, and the precedent encourages further challenges. The Iranian boat suddenly accelerated. One cut across the bow of the destroyer at high speed, dangerously close. Another maneuvered toward the ship's stern. On radar, a new signal appeared, possibly a drone launch. In modern naval warfare, drones change everything. A small unmanned aircraft can relay targeting data for coastal missile batteries miles away. It can observe defensive reactions. It can probe for weaknesses. The American destroyer's electronic warfare systems activated. Signal jamming began. defensive radars tracked aerial signatures. Warning flares were deployed. Still, the boats pressed. This was no accident. Iran's naval doctrine is psychological as much as tactical. Show defiance, demonstrate presence, portray dominance in home waters. Each confrontation becomes domestic propaganda, proof of resistance against a superpower. But the ocean does not reward pride. As the distance narrowed to a critical threshold, the U.S. vessel escalated its warnings. Audible sirens, long-range acoustic devices emitting piercing tones. Crew-served weapons visibly trained on approaching craft. Then came the decisive shift. An American helicopter lifted off from the destroyer's flight deck rotors, slicing through the humid air, armed, watching, recording everything. From above, the geometry of the encounter changed. The Iranian boats were no longer shadows on radar, they were exposed. The helicopter broadcast direct warnings in Persian. Moments passed. Finally, one by one, the fast boats slowed. They turned. And they withdrew. No shots fired, no missiles launched. But the message had been delivered by both sides. Iran had demonstrated its willingness to confront. The United States had demonstrated its readiness to respond. To outside observers, it might seem like another routine incident in a long history of maritime friction. But inside command centers, the analysis was immediate. What if a missile battery had locked on? What if a drone strike had been attempted? What if a warning shot had ricocheted? Every encounter carries risk, and each risk compounds over time. The Persian Gulf remains one of the most militarized waterways on Earth. American carrier strike groups rotate through regularly. Iranian coastal defenses remain on constant alert. Regional allies monitor every movement. The balance is delicate, because while Iran can challenge the U.S. Navy, it cannot defeat it in open conventional battle. And that reality shapes every decision made in those tense minutes at sea. The confrontation ended without bloodshed. But the sea remembers. And the next time radar screens light up at dawn, the margin for error may be even smaller. The withdrawal of the Iranian fast boats did not mean the danger had passed. It meant the first move had been measured. In the hours after the encounter, intelligence analysts began reconstructing every second. Infrared footage from the helicopter, radar logs from the destroyer, electronic signals intercepted during the drone activity. Patterns were compared with previous incidents. Speed profiles were analyzed. Communications traffic was translated and dissected. Because modern naval confrontations are rarely isolated moments, they are probes. And probes are designed to gather information. From Iran's perspective, each close approach tests American reaction time. How quickly does the destroyer deploy air support? At what distance do warnings escalate? Which frequencies are used for jamming? How disciplined are weapons crews? Every answer becomes data. But the same is true in reverse. The U.S. Navy studies boat formations, engine signatures, command structure behavior. It tracks which units deploy, how coordinated they are, whether drones operate independently or as part of a wider targeting network. This silent duel of observation is as critical as any missile exchange. Yet beneath the intelligence chess match lies a harsher strategic truth. If escalation truly began, it would not remain limited to small boats. Iran's naval doctrine is layered. The visible swarm is only the outer ring. Behind it stand coastal anti-ship missile batteries capable of striking targets over 200 kilometers away, mines that can cripple multi-billion-dollar warships, submarines operating quietly in shallow waters, ballistic missiles designed to threaten regional bases. And the United States knows this. That is why American destroyers in the region operate as part of integrated networks. A single ship may appear alone on the horizon, but it is supported by satellites, long-range bombers, submarines, and carrier-based aircraft. If Iran crossed the threshold from harassment to attack, the response would be swift and overwhelming. History has already offered a preview. During Operation Praying Mantis in 1988, a single U.S. retaliatory campaign destroyed Iranian oil platforms used for military staging, sank multiple warships, and crippled naval infrastructure in less than a day. The imbalance of firepower was stark. Today, that imbalance has only widened. American carrier strike groups bring stealth fighters capable of precision strikes deep inland. Cruise missiles launched from destroyers can hit hardened targets hundreds of miles away. Submarines can operate undetected along Iran's coastline. The calculus is simple. Iran can inflict pain, but prolonged confrontation would devastate its naval capabilities. Which raises the question, why risk it? The answer lies in perception. For Tehran, standing down without challenge risks appearing weak domestically. The Strait of Hormuz is framed as sovereign space, even when international law designates international transit rights. By confronting American vessels, Iran reinforces a narrative of resistance and regional authority. It is strategic theater. But theater carries danger when actors misread cues. Imagine a slightly different scenario. A nervous gunner misinterprets a sudden turn as hostile intent. A warning shot splashes too close to a patrol boat. A drone malfunctions and crashes near a destroyer's deck, interpreted as an attempted strike. Within seconds, defensive systems would respond. The Phalanx close-in weapon system can fire 4,500 rounds per minute. Surface-to-air missiles can intercept aerial threats instantly. Armed helicopters can disable small craft with precision fire. And once kinetic engagement begins, it rarely pauses politely. Iranian commanders understand this, so do American ones, which is why most encounters remain calibrated just below open conflict. But there is another dimension: global economics. Any disruption in the Strait of Hormuz sends oil prices soaring, insurance rates spike, shipping companies reroute, energy markets shudder. Iran is acutely aware that even limited instability grants leverage in negotiations beyond the sea. Sanctions relief, regional influence, political bargaining. The United States, meanwhile, views freedom of navigation as a core principle. If one choke point becomes vulnerable to coercion, others may follow, from the South China Sea to the Red Sea. So each side defends not just territory, but precedent. Back aboard the American destroyer, life returned to routine after the encounter. Sailors resumed maintenance tasks. Watch rotations continued. Meals were served in the galley. But conversations lingered. They had seen how close the boats came. They had felt the tension in the captain's voice. They had watched the helicopter lift into uncertain airspace. For many young sailors, it was their first real confrontation. Training scenarios are controlled. Simulations end cleanly. Real-world encounters carry consequences that ripple far beyond the deck. Across the water, Iranian crews likely felt similar adrenaline. Small boat operators know they are the most exposed in any escalation. Steel hulls offer limited protection against heavy-caliber rounds. A destroyer's defensive systems would overwhelm them in seconds. Yet they still approached. Courage? Duty? Political pressure? In volatile regions, motivation is rarely simple. The broader strategic environment remains fragile. Proxy conflicts simmer across the Middle East. Drone warfare evolves rapidly. Cyber operations blur the lines between peace and war. In such an atmosphere, naval confrontations become signals: visible, deliberate, symbolic. Iran challenged the U.S. Navy. Was it a mistake? From a purely military standpoint, direct conventional conflict would almost certainly end badly for Iran's surface fleet. The disparity in tonnage, technology, and global reach is undeniable. But the objective may never have been victory in battle. It may have been to demonstrate resolve, to gather intelligence, to test boundaries without crossing them. And in that narrow sense, the encounter achieved its purpose without triggering catastrophe. For the United States, the lesson is equally clear. Dominance at sea does not eliminate risk. Even the world's most powerful navy must navigate political constraints, geographic choke points, and the unpredictable nature of human decision-making. The Persian Gulf remains a pressure chamber. Every radar contact matters. Every maneuver is recorded. Every near miss adds to a ledger of tension that grows year by year. Someday, another dawn will break over those waters. Another cluster of fast boats may appear on the horizon. Another captain will face the same calculation between restraint and response. And when that moment comes, the stakes will be as high as ever. Because in one of the world's most strategic waterways, power is not measured only by firepower but by discipline. Iran challenged the U.S. Navy. This time, both sides stepped back. Next time, the margin may not be so forgiving.